Unit 3 Genetics. Main principles of heredity and genes. Heredity is the passing of traits from parents to offspring. Genetics is the science that studies heredity. There are two types of traits: the heredity traits that are transmitted from one generation to another, as the eye color and hair color, and the acquired traits, which can't be transmitted from one generation to another, as learning Spanish and playing piano. Gregor Mendel, he is the father of modern genetics who placed the basics of heredity. Why did Mendel choose the pea plant for his experiments? That's because the pea plant is easy to be planted and grows fast. It has a short life cycle. Its flowers are hermaphrodite. It can be easily artificially pollinated. It produces a large number of offspring in one generation. In addition, there are several contrasting traits that can be easily recognized in the pea plant, as the flower color, the plant height, the seed color, seed shape, pod color, pod shape, and the flower position. Mendel assumed that the heredity traits are transmitted from parents to the offspring by means of genes. Every trait is controlled by two factors, one from each parent. These factors are similar or homozygous if the trait is pure, and not similar, heterozygous, if the trait is impure or hybrid. The two heredity factors are separated when the gametes are formed. Mendel's first law is known as the law of segregation. When gametes are formed, each gene's alleles separate independently, therefore gametes have one allele for each gene. While Mendel's second law is known as the law of independent assortment. Alleles of different genes separate independently of one another during meiosis. For more understanding, watch the following video.
These days, scientists know how you inherit characteristics from your parents. They're able to calculate probabilities of having a specific trait or getting a genetic disease according to the information they have from the parents and the family history. But how is this possible? To understand how traits pass from one living being to its descendants, we need to go back in time to the 19th century and a man named Gregor Mendel. Mendel was an Austrian monk and biologist who loved to work with plants. By breeding the pea plants he was growing in the monastery's garden, he discovered the principles that rule heredity. In one of the most classic examples, Mendel combined a purebred yellow-seeded plant with a purebred green-seeded plant, and he got only yellow seeds. He called the yellow color trait the dominant one, because it was expressed in all the new seeds. Then he let the new yellow-seeded hybrid plants self-fertilize, and in this second generation he got both yellow and green seeds, which meant that the green trait had been hidden by the dominant yellow. He called this hidden trait the recessive trait. From those results, Mendel inferred that each trait depends on a pair of factors, one of them coming from the mother and the other from the father. Now we know that these factors are called alleles and represent the different variations of a gene. Depending on which type of allele Mendel found in each seed, we can have what we call a homozygous pea, where both alleles are identical, and what we call a heterozygous pea, when the two alleles are different. This combination of alleles is known as genotype, and its result, being yellow or green, is called phenotype. To clearly visualize how alleles are distributed amongst descendants, we can use a diagram called the Punnett square. You just place the different alleles on both axes, and then you figure out the possible combinations. Let's look at Mendel's peas, for example. Let's write the dominant yellow allele as an uppercase Y, and the recessive green allele as a lowercase y. The uppercase y always overpowers its lowercase friend, so the only time you get green babies is if you have two lowercase y's. In Mendel's first generation, the yellow homozygous pea mom will give each pea kid a yellow dominant allele, and the green homozygous pea dad will give a green recessive allele, so all the pea kids will be yellow heterozygous. Then, in the second generation, where the two heterozygous kids marry, their babies could have any of the three possible genotypes, showing the two possible phenotypes in a 3-to-1 proportion. But even peas have a lot of characteristics. For example, besides being yellow or green, peas may be round or wrinkled. So we could have all these possible combinations: round yellow peas, round green peas, wrinkled yellow peas, and wrinkled green peas. To calculate the proportions for each genotype and phenotype, we can use a Punnett square too. Of course, this will make it a little more complex. And lots of things are more complicated than peas, like, say, people. These days, scientists know a lot more about genetics and heredity, and there are many other ways in which some characteristics are inherited. But it all started with Mendel and his peas.
It's well known that the chromosomes consist of nucleic acid, which is deoxyribonucleic acid, the DNA, and proteins. Genes are parts of DNA that carry the traits of living organisms. How can the gene control the appearance of a trait? The gene produces special enzyme, which is responsible for a chemical reaction. The chemical reaction forms a special type of protein, which is responsible for the appearance of the trait. For example, if you inherit the responsible gene for the eye brown color from one of your parents, which is a dominant trait, then the gene works on forming a protein causing this trait to appear on you.